So I just finished reading this book about human history. It's called Sapiens by Yuval Harari. It's everywhere right now. I'm sure you've heard of it. I'm really glad I read it. It was a super comprehensive overview of human history that I think for most people who haven't kind of put all of human history together, it's a really interesting read. I agreed with a lot of what he wrote, and I think he had a lot of very interesting insights. But the book definitely had its drawbacks, and I think overall it wasn't a fully accurate portrayal of human history. And I think there's some drawbacks you should know about if you plan on reading this book. So essentially, this book traces the history of humankind from our most primitive form to modern day, and Harari goes on to speculate about the future. Although history is only made up of one set of facts, we often need religion, philosophy, and politics to explain why things happened. And I think this was a big problem for Sapiens. So specifically, the biggest issue I found with the book was that he doesn't define his moral framework, yet the book is full of his philosophical and moral value judgments. He dismisses anything not material like religion as not real or imagined. So when he goes on to talk for pages and pages and pages about factory farming and animal cruelty, and he calls it the worst crime in all of human history, probably the worst crime in all of human history, which is an absurd statement, obviously, for most of us, because most of us value humans above animals, and we think of something like the Holocaust as much, much, much worse than factory farming. So this problem of moral judgments without basis comes up a lot in the book. He brings up the possibility of a hunter-gatherer's life being better than a modern-day factory worker's. The problem with this argument is that without being based on a moral framework, it feels very arbitrary and kind of overall, I feel like leads to a very disjointed reading of history, which is pretty unconvincing for most readers who are Western and whose values are rooted in Judeo-Christianity. So another major problem I found with the book was his illiteracy of Christianity. And you don't have to be Christian to see that he painted the religion in, I think, an unfair light. So take, for instance, the 1572 Bartholomew's Day massacre in France, which in his effort to paint Christianity as an intolerant force for human history, he simplifies the conflict down to just one aspect, which is religion. But according to most scholars that I've read, it's not really that simple. For example, this massacre was motivated by many things, including political intrigue, sexual jealousy, human barbarism, and feud. Something that also bothered me is that he never highlighted any of the positive forces and aspects that religion has contributed to the world. And I think this led to a very intellectually dishonest view. I think it's more than fine, and he definitely points out some of the drawbacks of religion and Christianity, but it feels like a false kind of narrative when you don't mention the other side. I also found his characterization of free will to be very questionable and highly flawed. So he says that if God knew in advance that he was going to create an evil person, then why would he create that evil person? But this overlooks, in my opinion, the possibility that if God only creates good people, then there really is no free will, because you don't have a choice to be good. You never had a choice to be good. So you're really coerced into acting a certain way, and in mine and a lot of people's view, that prohibits truth and love. So lastly, and in my opinion, probably most importantly, regarding Christianity as kind of a topic that I feel like he got very wrong in a lot of ways, he says that he's unable to explain why the Christianity took over the Roman Empire. He actually calls it one of history's strangest twists. Considering this is one of the most important events in modern history, I think it really takes away from the book that he can't explain this. And I think it says a lot about this book that that's something that he can't explain. And considering how important it is, I think it should really give you an idea of his values. So overall, I found this book to be a kind of postmodernist, humanist take, not rooted in any value system, which overall led to an arbitrary and sometimes wrong view of history. And I just think you should know that if you are considering reading this book. I definitely recommend that people read this book because of its comprehensiveness, but everyone has their biases, and it's definitely very important to know that when you're reading any book. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like or subscribe.